Hey there guys, GT5Man21 here, and today here is your review of the Bahrain Grand Prix coming to you from Sakhir in Bahrain. And can I just say, before I start this review, it was the 900th Grand Prix and the first time Bahrain went under light, so it was a night race. But can I just say also, what a race! That was, along with other races, probably one of the best races I've ever seen. It was that exciting and that close to watch. I would love to hear what you guys say in the comments and what you thought of that race, because that was amazing. Anyway, let's get on to the review. So let's start off in qualifying. Now in Q1, nothing really much happened apart from the Mercedes just topping the timesheets again. Sebastian Vettel having decent pace, with Ricciardo actually going quicker than him actually. But then nothing really much happened. So in Q1, the 6 people that got knocked out were Pastor Maldonado, Adrian Sutil, Marcus Ericsson, Kamui Kobayashi, Jules Bianchi, Marcus Ericsson, and Max Chilton. However, Adrian Sutil would be later given a 5-place grid penalty for impeding Grosjean. Grosjean tried to get past Adrian Sutil, but he swerved to the right, continually refusing to notice that Grosjean was there, and the pair of them made contact, so clearly that was Adrian's fault, which would then mean it would bump him down to last place, Adrian Sutil. So then we got into Q2, and again, nothing much happened. The Mercedes dominated it yet again, the pair of them topping the timesheets. Ricciardo looking quick again, but the biggest shock, one shock, was obviously Nico Hülkenberg. He was expected to be in the top 10, but it didn't pay out. He could only manage 12th. But the biggest shock was, for the second time this season, Sebastian Vettel was knocked out in Q2, only managing P11. So the 6 people that got knocked out in Q2 were Sebastian Vettel, Nico Hülkenberg, Daniel Kvyat, Jean-Eric Vergne, Esteban Gutierrez, and Romain Grosjean. So then we finally got into Q3. We had our Q3 contenders on the track, and it looked like the Mercedes is yet again were going to get another pole position, but the question was which one was going to get the pole, because at the moment, from what it looked like, Hamilton might have got it. So the first lap that the two Mercedes did, Rosberg was quicker than Hamilton. They then changed tyres. People were having decent paces as well, especially Ricciardo, who was in third. Rosberg was slower on his second lap than his best, but it didn't matter anyway, because Lewis Hamilton made a mistake in turn 1 which cost him pole position, and no one went better than the Mercedes. So at the end of the day, it was Nico Rosberg who was on pole position, ending Lewis Hamilton's run of pole positions. And for the first time since Silverstone last year, it was a Mercedes front row. This time Nico on pole position ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Daniel Ricciardo qualified in third. However, his Malaysian gremlins didn't stop there, because thanks to the Malaysia race, he received a 10-place grid penalty, which dropped him down to 13th. So people who were 4th to 13th moved up 1. So that means Vettel moved up to 10th. And some brilliant qualifying though. Bottas and Perez, they qualified 4th and 5th, but because of Ricciardo's penalty, Bottas qualified 3rd and Perez in 4th. So the grid looked like this then. So it was Nico Rosberg on pole position ahead of Lewis Hamilton, with Valtteri Bottas 3rd, Sergio Perez 4th, Kimi Raikkonen 5th, Jenson Button 6th, with Felipe Massa 7th, Kevin Magnussen 8th, with Fernando Alonso 9th, Sebastian Vettel in 10th, Nico Hülkenberg 11th, Daniel Kvyat in 12th, with Daniel Ricciardo 13th, Jean-Eric Vergne 14th, Esteban Gutierrez 15th, Romain Grosjean 16th, Pastor Maldonado 17th, with Kamui Kobayashi 18th, Jules Bianchi 19th, Marcus Ericsson in 20th, Max Chilton 21st, and in last was Adrian Sutil. So we get to the race. and we were underway. No stalls again, which is good. Hamilton had the best start than Nico and took the lead into turn 1. Nico was not prepared to give up though. He looked at turn 4, but ran out of track trying to find a way past Lewis Hamilton. Ran off a bit, and Lewis was in the lead on the first lap. It wasn't a good start for Valtteri Bottas. He dropped down to 5th, but a good start from Felipe Massa from 7th moved him up to 3rd. Perez stayed in 4th, and Vettel didn't make up any positions. He was still in 10th position. Kimi Raikkonen did not get a good start. He was down in 9th. So at the end of the first lap, it was Lewis Hamilton ahead of Nico Rosberg and Felipe Massa 3rd, Sergio Perez 4th, Valtteri Bottas was in P5. The two Mercedes were still scrapping though, but at the moment, Sebastian Vettel had problems with his DRS, meaning that he was falling back from Kimi Raikkonen. He struggled to find a way past. Daniel Ricciardo was making it up the field after his penalty, and then the first retirement came from Adrian Sutil after his first pit stop in lap 3. He dropped to last. He passed Jules Bianchi, but then Jules Bianchi actually came into the pits. Jules Bianchi had a look at Adrian Sutil, but made first contact, only a bit of contact, but then the second contact came at turn 1 when Jules Bianchi dive bombed into Adrian Sutil, damaging Adrian's suspension and causing him to retire. It looked like a puncher, but he damaged more, which was the suspension, and had to retire. Jules Bianchi had a puncture after that, and then later on, after he had his tyre repaired, he would be received a stop-go penalty for his actions, which in my opinion was definitely his fault. He clearly dive-bombed there. The two Mercedes are still scrapping though, swapping places each lap. It had to go down to the pit stops as it was that close. The pair of them nearly made contact at one point. But it looked like to me that the Mercedes were on a two-stop strategy. Half the field, it looked like it was going to be a 3-stop race, but it turned out half the field were doing a 2-stop strategy. For example, the Mercedes and Jenson Button, and half of them were doing a 3-stop. For example, the Williams pair and Felipe Massa and Valtteri Bottas. It looked like the Mercedes were having a different strategy, as Hamilton came in for another set of soft tyres, and then Rosberg, after a few laps out, few more laps out than on the track than Lewis, he came in for the prime tyres. Lewis managed to keep the lead and had built a gap of 6 seconds. So clearly at the moment Lewis had the best tyre, but latter stage of the race Lewis would wear out his tyres, and Rosberg, because he was on the primes, would be able to catch him up. Before that though, Jean-Eric Vergne was the next person to retire. He had a puncture on the first lap from contact with one of the Lotuses, and then had to retire because I believe he had a problem of some sort. I don't know. So he retired. The Williamses made their first stop, but Valtteri Bottas was the first of the Williamses to pit, and then before Massa came into the pits, Sergio Perez was fighting him for 3rd place and eventually got past Massa before Massa came into the pits. So Perez clearly having the pace for a podium today. Massa came in and was behind Valtteri Bottas. Bottas leapfrogged him in the pits. Nico Hülkenberg had made his pit stop, and after Sergio Perez made his, Nico Hülkenberg had leapfrogged him. So clearly Nico was on course for a podium as well, from 11th on the grid. What a drive he was having. Then there was a big fight for 3rd with Lewis building up a bit of a gap. There was a big fight for 3rd between the two Williamses and the two Force Indias. Bottas keeping behind Massa, who was having a look at him. Bottas then came in to give Massa some clear air, but he had to have a fight with the two Force Indias. A lap later though, Perez then passed Massa. Well, before that, Perez actually got past Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg claimed that he shoved him off the track, but I can't see where he's coming from. Clearly, Perez saw him and had to twitch his steering wheel to avoid contact. So he moved up to 4th, and then a lap later, he then did the same move on Massa, did the cutback on him like he did the first time he passed Massa, and moved up to 3rd. And then later on, Hulkenberg, with the best traction in the Williams, got up to 4th. Clearly that Massa's tyres were graining, and then later on having to pit, with Bottas then getting ahead of him again. Then the two Force Indias then made their pit stop and came out behind the two Williamses again, with Perez ahead of Hulkenberg yet again. Then the two Mercedeses, well actually before the two Mercedes pitted, there was another retirement for Marcus Ericsson. He had some sort of technical issue and had to pull off at the last corner. So obviously issues there. The two Mercedes then came in on the same lap because of the big gap they had. Lewis came in for prime tyres because he needed to, and Rosberg came in for the options. So clearly they were on a two-stop strategy. But then the next retirement was a big accident, a big crash, involving Esteban Gutierrez and Pastor Maldonado. Maldonado came out the pit lane exit, but misjudged his braking, went into the side of Esteban Gutierrez, and then a nasty crash happened. Esteban Gutierrez violently rolled his car and retired from the race. Pastor Maldonado escaping without damage, which later on resulted in him getting a 10-second stop-go penalty for his actions, which was clearly his fault. It was a nasty crash to see, and thankfully Esteban Gutierrez walked out of that incident unharmed, so that's a good sign to see. Because of that though, the safety car came out, bunched up the field, which was bad for Lewis Hamilton, because even though he had made his pit stop, he was on the slower tyre compared to his teammate. So Rosberg had an opportunity to win the race. The car was cleared about 4 laps after it had the crash, but the safety car was still out because they had to wait for the two drivers that were lapped, which was Kobayashi and Bianchi, and I believe Chilton as well. In fact, that might be 3 actually. And eventually they caught up. So on lap 46, the safety car came in and the race was back on. And straight away, Rosberg, trying to get on to past Hamilton, went to the outside of turn 1, but couldn't get the move done. Yeah. Hulkenberg had a look at Perez, but Perez stayed ahead of him there. And yeah, not really much happening there. The Red Bulls were making it up the field as well. They had some pace after the safety car. Rosberg still having a look, but yet again ran out of track trying to find a way past Hamilton. Hamilton stayed ahead. They were still scrapping though. At one point, Rosberg looked like he had the lead, but Hamilton stayed on the outside to keep hold of the lead. Rosberg had another look at turn 4, but yet again ran out a bit of track and had to back out of it. Hamilton still led the race. He could have had a chance on the other DRS straight, but ran out of straight. The Red Bulls, though, were flying out there. Button was dropping back. He got passed by the two Williamses and then the two Ferraris as well. And then later on by Daniel Kvyat, so he dropped down to 11th place. Actually, during the safety car, Kevin Magnussen retired from the race thanks to a suspected clutch issue. So that ended his race, which was disappointing. So, yeah. After Magnussen retired, then the two Red Bulls, after passing Jenson Button, were on the back of Nico Hulkenberg. But first of all, Daniel Ricciardo then got past Sebastian Vettel, and then later on past Nico Hulkenberg for 4th place. Sebastian Vettel was struggling to find a way past Nico Hulkenberg. Nico Rosberg dropped back then from Lewis Hamilton, but it was still close between them. Then there was a 6-car scrap for 5th place between Hulkenberg, Vettel. Sorry about that, I've got a bit of a croaky voice. Massa, Bottas, Alonso, and Raikkonen, and then potentially Daniel Kvyat. Daniel Ricciardo was setting his sights on Sergio Perez, so he was fighting for third place. So this was exciting on the last few laps. Then the next retirement came from Jenson Button. He also had a DRS issue like Sebastian Vettel, and then had some technical issues, forcing him to retire in the garage. However, because he completed 90% of the race, he still finished in the required 90% classification. So he was classified in 17th. And at the end, after the 900th F1 race, Lewis Hamilton won by just over a second ahead of Nico Rosberg to take his second win of the season. And Mercedes is third out of 3 Grand Prix wins this season. Plus that also, it was Mercedes' 7th win since returning to the sport in 2010, and their second 1-2, a back-to-back 1-2. The fight for third, though, was still on, with Daniel Ricciardo and Sergio Perez still at it. But at the end, for the first time since Belgium 2009, Sergio Perez took Force India's first podium. And plus, Sergio Perez got on the podium for the first time since Italy 2012. So, very good. Daniel Ricciardo, my driver of the day, from 13th to 4th, nearly a podium. So he finished 4th. Hulkenberg held off the train to finish 5th. Sebastian Vettel, a disappointing 6th position. But at the end, it was Lewis Hamilton who won the Grand Prix ahead of his teammate Nico Rosberg. A very exciting race indeed, guys. I absolutely enjoyed it. So, at the end of that, it was Lewis Hamilton who won the race ahead of Nico Rosberg, with Sergio Perez 3rd, Daniel Ricciardo 4th, Nico Hulkenberg 5th, Sebastian Vettel 6th, Felipe Massa 7th, Valtteri Bottas 8th, Fernando Alonso 9th, Kimi Raikkonen 10th, Daniel Kvyat 11th, so missing out on the points, Romain Grosjean 12th, Max Chilton 13th, Pastor Maldonado 14th, Kamui Kobayashi 15th, Jules Bianchi 16th, and Jenson Button, who was classified in 17th. The 5 retirements were Kevin Magnussen, Esteban Gutierrez, Marcus Ericsson, Jean-Eric Vergne, and Adrian Sutil. So, they were the results. Now, in the let's have a look at the championship. Let's have a look at the Drivers' Championship. Nico Rosberg still leads the Drivers' Championship now by only 11 points ahead of Lewis Hamilton, with Nico Hulkenberg getting up to 3rd place. Fernando Alonso is in 4th, with Jenson Button 5th. Sebastian Vettel moves up to 6th. Kevin Magnussen 7th. Valtteri Bottas in 8th. Sergio Perez moves up to 9th. Daniel Ricciardo moves up to 10th. Massa's in 11th, with Raikkonen in 12th. And Kvyat is Vergne in 13th, and Kvyat 14th. The trying to work this out now. Oh yeah, the 8 drivers who are still yet to score are Romain Grosjean, Adrian Sutil, Esteban Gutierrez, Max Chilton, Kamui Kobayashi, Pastor Maldonado, Marcus Ericsson, and Jules Bianchi. In the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes increased their lead. They have broken the 100 point barrier already, ahead of Force India, who have moved up to 2nd in the Constructors' Championship thanks to their 3rd and 5th place today. McLaren dropped down to 3rd thanks to their double retirement, with Red Bull moving up to 4th. Ferrari have dropped down to 5th, with Williams dropping down to 6th, and Toro Rosso are in 7th. And the 4 teams that are still yet to score are Lotus, Sauber, Marussia, and Caterham. Marussia getting back ahead of Caterham. So overall, guys, it was more exciting than Melbourne. I thought it was going to be exciting, but not this exciting. What a race, guys. The next race is in Shanghai in China, which is in 2 weeks' time on the 20th of April. So this series will be back in 2 weeks' time. So yeah, that is my review of the Bahrain Grand Prix. What a race. My driver of the day has to go to Daniel Ricciardo from 13th to 4th. Potentially a podium, but Sergio Perez getting Force India's first podium since Belgium 2009 and his first podium since Italy 2012. A brilliant race. So many surprises and excitement. And luckily Esteban Gutierrez was walked away unharmed from that nasty accident. And yeah, overall, guys, a very exciting race. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Give it a like, comment below, subscribe if you're new for the channel. Actually, don't give it a like because I've disabled the ratings until those idiots have stopped disliking the video. So comment below, subscribe if you are new to the channel, and also check out my main channel, Joseph Willows, which is full of non-F1 content. Just search it in the search bar because I can't be bothered to post a link in the description again. So anyway, guys, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I've been GT5Man21, and I shall see you next time. Cheers. Some news now about F1 and a further penalty for Pastor Maldonado's incident with Esteban Gutierrez. Pastor Maldonado has been given a 5-place grid penalty for China for his actions, so he pretty much deserved that, really. So yeah, I was pretty sure that he was gonna get more than just a 10-second stop grid penalty. He had to get more punishment than that because that was a horrible accident that he caused there. So yeah, he's got a 10-place grid penalty for China, and sorry, 5-place grid penalty for China even, sorry. And yeah, see you.